Hey YouTube, we are 1 week into the season of GBL. I have tested pretty much every single Pokemon that got new moved or buffed news. I've used a couple Pokemon that I think are going to be very sneaky, and they were very strong when I used them. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go over what I think is the state of the meta, what you should be looking for for the rest of the season, what Pokemon I think are going to be super, super strong you're going to see everywhere, what Pokemon I don't think you're going to see as much of, what typings you're going to see a lot of, and a couple sneaky picks to hopefully carry you later in the season. So before we get into this season's of the meta, we need to look at last season, because we need to look at where the meta was, what it was, and if anything that has happened this season would change that specifically. Feel free to name a Pokemon that you think I missed. But for grass, it was Credilli and Jumpluff. Normal typing, I put Diggersby and Ferret. Fire, Talonflame. Water, your Lapras, Gastrodon, Azumarill, and Hydro Cannon users. Electric, Dedenne, Stunfisk, Morpeko. Ice, again, Lapras and Dugong. Fighters, Primeape, Annihilate. Poison, Clodsire, Drapion. Ground, Marowak. And for some of these, like I'll put like some of the other grounds, like Lapras was in like water and ice, and same thing with ground. Like I just have ground as Marowak, but Golurk is under Ghost. Flying, Corviknight and Galarian Moltres. Fortress and Scissor as your bugs. Bastion as your rock. Dusknoir, Corsola, Dusclops, Jellicent, Golurk as your ghost. Regidrago, Giratina as your dragons, and Wigglytuff as your fairies. So that is what I believe was the main meta. Now that obviously wasn't just an inclusive list, because there's 70 to 80 Pokemon that had play last season, but I think those are the ones that you saw more often than not. So what happened this season that is going to take some of these away or rise others up? So the looking at this list is almost unfortunate to say there's really only like 2, maybe 3 of these Pokemon that are now not playable. Jumpluff with the Aerial Ace nerf. Ferret did not get a nerf, but there's a lot more steals, and we'll go over steals of typing. So Ferret, I think, still has some play, but probably not as much as before. And where's the third one that I wanted to talk about? Galarian Moltres. I think Darks take a little bit of a hit with how strong some of these fairies are now, and just just the prevalence of the fairies, like you could, and like the rock throw and the rock users, Galarian Moltres because of the rock users that you see. So what happened? You got the uptick in Carbink and Bastiodon because they both got buffed. So a few more rock type Pokemon. Obviously, Empoleon is the big winner with that metal sound there. Togekiss coming in as the fairy. You got your other fairies that are a bit down here more, but otherwise, as you're seeing on this list, and if you listen to what I said as the main meta Pokemon, Stunfisk, Clodsire, Dusknoir, Lapras, Credilli, Corsola, Morpeko, Diggersby, like there, Jellicent, Fortress. There we go. Every single Pokemon that's in the rank 10 to 20 is what I named for last season. There's Gastrodon, there's Marowak. So, you unfortunately have, not unfortunately, I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, you have basically, I didn't even count how many was on this list. We're looking at about 20, 25 Pokemon on this list. 3 went off of this list, and you're now adding what I think to the meta is going to be for sure meta Pokemon. Carbink, Empoleon, Bastiodon, Togekiss, Ninetales. I think you'll see some play. I wouldn't call it meta, but you will see some of it. Dragons, you'll see some. Again, I'm not going to call any of these dragons in particular meta. So maybe just like those 4 have become instant meta. But then you got some of these other Pokemon like Gyarados, Ninetales. All these dragons do have play. So all these dragons have play. Gyarados, Ninetales, as Pharaoh, Murkrow. I haven't seen a ton of those yet, but Pharaoh I've seen quite a lot of. So there's like 7 or 8 Pokemon that have really risen into the forefront of what are meta Pokemon. So where do I think the meta is going? So over the years, and I'll bring it back to the flying, because I've having this, not debate, but this back and forth with a subscriber about the state of the meta on flying. So to understand where we are in this meta, you need to understand past metas and how we've gotten here, because what has caused ground to become very meta in the past couple seasons was a direct effect of the nerf to flying. So we've always had a meta that has been dominated by water since season 1. Water in itself, let's just bring up Blastoise because I think it is one of the underrated Pokemon in this meta. Water itself is only weak to 2 typings, electric and grass. And back in the day, there was like maybe Venusaur as like one of the only grass Pokemon. And there wasn't much else grass, and there pretty much was no electric back in the day, right? So if you think about like first, second generation, there was not many grass and electric Pokemon that were any sort of meta. So water has always been strong. It's because electric and grass, their sort of strengths of the main series games do not translate to GBL. So the ease of evolving and the speed and stuff like that does not evolve to like transfer to GBL. So grass and electric really need buffed moves in GBL to be relevant. And you can even see it through like Frenzy Plant. You have a ton of Frenzy Plant users and the majority of them are just not good. So with those typing so bad, water has always been a meta since the early seasons. We only had for darks back in the day, and you can see the sort of dark list here. Back in the day, it was Umbreon, was one of the only darks. And there wasn't a ton of ghosts early because again you only had the first few generations in the early stages. So Sableye was one bit. Sableye was half dark, but what ended up happening is dark just did not like catch on to a certain extent. Like they tried to buff some dark Pokemon, but every buff is met with like almost immediate like counter buffs, right? So you have like Morpeko and Malamar. Like I haven't seen many Malamars this season because Malamars got scared because all the bugs got buffed. And Morpeko has that bug weakness plus fighting weakness. So you still see them. Don't get me wrong. You will still see them. But like you can just see on this list, dark, there's not a lot. Like Pangoro is not used. Like Pangoro is not used. And I've been Primeaper used nonstop, and Pangoro is not used. Guzzlord is probably one Dragon Dark that you will see. And then we're in Sableye, which is also half Ghost, what I just messed in, and then Galarian Moltres last season. So Dark has always been on the sort of bad end in GBL, which means Ghost has always been a top meta. And that was before all these other ghosts got buffed. But we had like this again, Sableye was half dark, but we had Trevenant out there for a while, and we had all these Pokemon. Like Marowak was a first season Pokemon as the ghost move, and then Drifblim was there for a while. So we've had ghosts kind of rise in the past, and then you've gotten all these new ghosts: Dusknoir, Corsola, Dusclops, Jellicent, Runerigus, Golurk. So ghosts have always been pretty high just because darks have been pretty low, and Ghost only has 2 weaknesses, Dark and Ghost. And if Dark's not there and you hit super effective against other ghosts, you're in a good spot. So the meta has always been, for the most part, for the last not the last few seasons, but like for most of GBL, has always been Ghost and Water. Now, we have had at a time a heavy flying presence. So back in the day, we started with Skarmory, and then for a while, the Noctowl was your main flyer. Like Charizard was there for a bit too, before Talonflame came in. So Charizard was there, and Skarmory was the number 1 ranked. Skarmory was the old Corviknight as the number 1 ranked Pokemon forever. And then we had Talonflame come in, and that kind of took away Charizard. So Talonflame came in, and then Gligar. Before that, Noctowl was there forever, and Gligar was up there. And then at one time, like 4 or 5 seasons ago, we had, give or take, 15 of the top 40 Pokemon were flying. They were your, like some of these, but it was a Gligar and Noctowl and Mantine and Pelipper and Altaria. And just like you had a bunch of flyers in the top 40. So that made it very difficult to run ground. And there was not, like some of these grounds have kind of just risen up over the past couple of years. But there was not a ton of even ground that were players. There was always the Mud Boys because they only have one weakness in grass, but all those Mud Boys are just like get by almost on like that half water. And Stunfisk, before the discharge, like no one used this. People use Galarian Stunfisk for a while there to counter like Registeel and the Flyers. But then Galarian Stunfisk got nerfed with the Mud Shots. So like ground, there was some ground, but there wasn't like an abundance of ground because of all the flyers. But then the flyers got nerfed, and at the same time, some of these other grounds got buffed, right? We got these Bone Club buffs, we got some Mud Slaps here, we got some Poison Sting buffs for Clodsire, we got this Discharge for Stunfisk. So now all of a sudden, you have your flyers going down, and at the same time, all these grounds are going up. And some of these grounds, yes, they're going to have problems with water Pokemon, but there's some Pokemon like Shadow Marowak where you can just like 2-shield your way through. So the meta was water, ghost, and ground. Like those three were the 3 typings, in my opinion, for the last like 4 or 5 seasons that have been just dominant. Now, we've also had like other typings. Like, don't get me wrong, we've had fairies, Azumarill, and Wigglytuff have been pretty much constants. For fairies, you will have like constants. You'll have like a 2 or 3 constants of everything. Fighters, like it's Annihilape and Primeape, but it was like Medicham, and yeah, Medi was the main one for with their like Machamp way back in the day, and then Medi. So you always have like a couple of each. So don't get me wrong, you're always gonna have a couple of those. But so you had like the main meta, and then you had like 2 or 3 typings of each other one. And unfortunately, if you look at my list, it's somewhat the same this season. So you still have on my list, there was not a ton of darks. And again, it's tough to run darks in general just because most of them do not have amazing moves, and the ones that are getting in here are somewhat getting in on their secondary moveset, right? Guzzlord's only has Brutal Swing here, but you're really running Dragon Tail, Dragon Claw combo here. Morpeko is, of course, that Aura Wheel, which is insane damage. Malamar, I can admit, like, well, Malamar's like a half Psychic, Psy Wave, same type attack bonus, and actually, Foul Play is not even an amazing move. You're throwing Superpower the majority of the time because Superpower does more than Foul Play, right? So, like, yes, these Pokemon are dark, but a lot of times they get in on their secondary typings, which means Ghost has always been meta. Ghost is a super strong typing. You're still going to see an abundance of Ghost. But so dark really isn't here, and I think Fire's got buffed. I'm just looking through those. Sorry, I'm just looking through the typings here. And Grass is really not here this season. You got Credillion number 12. You have Toedscruel at number 76, and again, my argument could be like Toedscruel, yes, it's half grass, which is helpful, but you're getting by on your Mud Slap combo there with your Mud Slap as your main thing. Although the duo typing is actually very interesting and helpful. But then you have nothing inside the top 100 for grass. So what do I think the main, all that to say, what do I think the main meta is going to be? I think the main meta will continue to be water, ground, and ghost as your main, and then you'll have like 2 or 3 of each typings to play with, right? So in your normal, you will have, again, Diggersby, Wiggly, maybe Fret, and then Pharaoh as like a half line. And some of these have secondary typings, right? And then your rocks are going to be Carbink and Bastiodon, and again, whether you count Cordeli as the rock or the grass, like there's your main rocks, right? So you're going to have like 2 of each. But so you have the 3 main typings of water, ghost, and ground, and then you'll have like 2 or 3 of each typing to go from there. So what does that mean? So you can look at this one of 3 ways, I think, if you're going to team build. One is you can leverage those strong typings and just know that if you pair like 2 of those Pokemon together, you're probably pretty good. Like Kanto Marowak is very safe with the Mud Slap, Bone Club, rocks I got buffed this season, and it's a 2-shield beast that you can just kind of slap your way through. Corsola, Dusclops. I've used both Corsola and Dusclops as safe swaps on teams early this season, and they are both very, very strong. And you can think about it just based on like how do you fare against the top meta, and why they're so strong is, again, they only have 2 weak. Ghost only has 2 weaknesses. Other ghosts, which you're hitting super effective against, and dark, which there's no real dark because everyone's scared of all these fairies, and dark just, again, hasn't been super meta in a while now. So you have Ghost, which is just hitting pretty much neutral, and not and less normals this season too that resist. So you have Ghost, Corviknight, Carbink, Empoleon, Dedenne, Bastiodon, Togekiss, Stunfisk, Clodsire, Dusknoir, Lapras, Credilli, Find Me. There you go, Morpeko. Your first Morpeko and Diggersby back to back there are your first 2 that are going to cause Ghost problems. But then you're basically free to run to Malamar. So I think Ghost is going to be very safe and free this season. So your first option is to like throw a ground together with a Ghost. If you add a water on just to play like the trifecta of the main typings, it may leave you a little vulnerable to grass. Again, do we care about grass? I don't know. We'll talk about that on the sort of third team build here. So the second one is to just find Pokemon typing irrelevant that can play against this top 20 Pokemon. And this is where you start to get into what you think is going to be just safe against the top 20. And my first guess, even though ground is, I guess it's not even ground, because the Pokemon I specifically think about and I used it and it was very, very strong, is Sandslash, a Sandslash. So Sandslash is a ice steel. I think steels are kind of the sneaky strong ones this season. You know, we are seeing a little more flyers, and some of these flyers do have or sphere, so you gotta watch out for those. But I think that a lot of these steals with Fairy Beam buffed, the Rock Throw users being buffed, and and a couple of them in the top one that's there, and your main weaknesses being fire, which don't get me wrong, fire is buffed this season, and I'm loving how Cancel Ninespale is playing, but there's still not a lot of fire. And again, there's not a lot of fire because what did I say the meta was? Water, ground, and now you have 2 rock throw users in the top 6. So fire is still pretty low. So when you don't need to worry about fires as much, and you can potentially cover your ground weakness elsewhere, I think steel is going to have a lot of play against the main meta, especially that you have a lot more flyers this season. Yeah. And more dragons. So that's the first thing. I would start looking at steels. The second thing I would look at is ice. And this is why Sandslash came to mind. I think ice is going to have a lot of play this season. You know, I named 3 typings. So there's water, which would be tough for ice. But there is ground, which you'll hit super effective against ground there. And ghost is neutral. And then some of these other Pokemon, like obviously the rock throws are going to be tough for you. But, you know, Stunfisk, ground. Togekiss, flyer, hit super effective. Stunfisk, ground, you hit super effective. Clodsire, ground, you hit super effective. Credilli, grass, you hit super effective. Diggersby, ground, you hit super effective. There is a lot just going down on this list. Marowak as a ground. There's a lot on this list that ice actually had a lot more play against than I initially thought. So whether you want to do something like Sandslash, that's a 66 ranked Pokemon here, or just have that sort of secondary typing in Lapras, I think Lapras is going to be very strong. Just because you have that sort of water combo that you can do, just the strength of water in itself, plus you have that ice coverage for some of these other things, although ground gets hit by water and ice anyways. And the third thing is roll with typings that people like me are not building for. And I did use Venusaur early in the season. And again, when you only have 2 grass in the top 100, and one of them's Credilli, which everyone's going to build for, and that half rock typing, like it's grass, but that half rock typing like makes ground neutral, adds a steel weakness, which is a few steels out here, adds a fighting weakness, which you got your Primate Banana Leap. So Credilli, although is very, very, very strong, I have it on a team too coming again, probably next time this comes around. Credilli is very strong, and definitely Pokemon you should use, but it does, that duo typing adds some weaknesses there. So you're not getting the pure like grass strength that I'm thinking about when I'm using a grass type Pokemon. Toadscroll, again, a very, very, very interesting one. Toadscroll's, I've used it. It's very unique in how you play it. It's a Mud Slap user, so it's a grass, but again, with the Mud Slap user and it's also ground, you kind of think of it like a ground type Pokemon, even though it has a Seed Bomb. So the typing is very unique that it can like wall Marowak, because ground resists the rock and the grass resists the ground. So you actually wall Marowak. So Toadscrolls can be like a one that I think you should use as well. But outside of that, like you're now getting into like sort of like outside top 100 Pokemon. I ran into a Dartrix, and I've used a Venusaur. And I've got to tell you, these grass have a lot of play this season. And again, it comes back to one, I just mentioned the main meta. Two of those three main meta typings, ground and water, are weak to grass. You are neutral against ghost, which is the other one. You hit super effective against rock. So Carbink, you hit super effective there. And pulling out like water is half steel. Like electric, you resist electric. So all these Dedenes out there and these Morpekos and stuff like that, you resist the electric the first time. And Stunfisk, right? We have this. It's very rare. It is very, very rare in a GBL meta to see two electric Pokemon in the top 10. That's like I don't think I've ever remember when that has happened. So having two in the top 10, which grass resists, like grass is a very sneaky pick just because of how bad it is against everything else. But we're not building everything against everything else per se. We're building against what I think is going to be the meta. And so it's going to be one of those things like, yes, you are going to see steals because I think steals is going to be very strong. Yes, you are going to see flyers because a bunch of flyers got buffed this season. But there's other things this season that aren't as going to be as prevalent as they have like last season. So the bug is a confusing one to me. Just how excited and how dominant this was for it to fall off like super quick this season. Bug got buffed like crazy last season. Fury Cutter got buffed. Bug Bite got buffed. And obviously Bug hit super effective against grass. So that was one of its limitations. But Bug this season, yes, Fortress is still there. And Shadow Scizor, I got on one team coming up in a couple weeks. And it's been as dominant as usual. But outside of those two, I use Crustle, kind of a fun one. I don't think it's going to be super meta, but it is fun to use. There's not a lot of bugs around anymore, so you had so many bugs just kind of rise to the top last season that have fallen off. Poisons, same sort of thing. You have 100 poisons that got buffed over the previous seasons, and now 2 in the top 100. Clodsire, which is also half ground, so grass would hit super effective against that. Wheezing would be a bit of an issue. But again, Drapion's at 168, I think is very underranked. But there's not a lot of poison. So suddenly, I said like poor grass, like this got buffed and this got buffed and this season fire and dragon got buffed. But it's like kind of like, okay, maybe not as many poisons as we thought we'd see. Maybe not as many bugs as we thought we would see. Yes, I think there's gonna be a lot of steals. Yes, a couple fire got buffed, but Ninetales and actually I did see Magcargo. I won't lie there. I saw Magcargo, but most of them I've been seeing as like Ninetales, Charizard, and Talonflame. But we'll see how relevant some of these are when you start seeing Carbinks, Empoleons, Bastiodons, Stunfisk, Clodsire, Lapras. Like there's a lot in the top 20. And that's if you go watch my Kanto Ninetales video, it's like I love how this plays. The spam is incredible. Getting to a real nuke in like 14, 12 turns is insane. But the meta, like the top 20 meta, does not value fire. So if that's kind of going to be put out because of the top 20 meta, I think grass has a lot of play in this meta. So if you want to sneak in, again, you can just use, if you want to be safe, just use like a Credilli or something. But Toadscrolls, Dartrix, Trevenant. I've actually seen 2 or 3 Trevenants already this season, and I think people are starting to work through that too. A Ghost Grass. Ghost is pretty free because there's not a lot of darks. Grass is pretty strong because of the way the meta is. I think people are starting to see Abomasnows. I've seen like 2 or 3 Abomasnows. Ice Grass. Like it's these typings: Grass, Ice, Steel. I think these are the sort of like off typings that are going to start rising up as we go along the seasons. The other stuff, like I don't think anything else. I don't think these typings that I'm going to mention are going to sort of rise up anymore. I think you're going to have the same 2 or 3, and that's about where it's going to end. So Dragon. Pick what dragon you want to use. Regidrago, Zweilous, Dragonair, Guzzlord, Giratina, Como. I think they all, Altaria. I think they all have play. I don't think any of them are going to be like meta that you need to like build around or against. I think you'll probably see them and then you won't see them. So some of these, combo these will be used. Poison, I kind of already mentioned. It's going to be Clodsire, Drapion as the main ones. Electric is going to be, you'll see, I think, a decent dose of electric, Dedenne, Stunfisk, maybe some more Pekko, but these three electric are very strong. So I build, potentially to build against those. Again, what does that? Ground, grass resist. I think those will be there. And then, yeah, you got your normal fighters. Flying is, flying is the oddball one. To bring back a thought that I talked about 15 minutes ago and didn't actually finish the story. Wing attack got nerfed like crazy. So all these flyers fell. And then because of that, all the grounds rose up, and ground is still meta. All of a sudden this season, we have a lot more usable flyers than we have in the past 4 seasons since Wing Attack has been nerfed. You know, Corviknight is number 1 Pokemon. Everyone should have that. We just had a community day with that Pokemon. But like Togekiss, Dragonite and Gyarados are going to be kind of like weirdest ones. Quite honestly, I've seen more Pharaohs than I have seen Dragonites and Gyarados. And Pharaohs ranked at like 114 here. And Dartrix. Like, so you will see a healthy dose of flyers this season. I think it's a couple things. I think it's one, a lot of flyers got buffed this season, right? Togekiss with that Peck Aurasphere combo, Dragonite got that Dragon Breath rework, and Thunder Punch for coverage, and Gyarados got that Dragon Breath rework, and Gligar got Fury Cutter last season, and more Murkrow got the Peck Drill Peck combo here, and then Pharaoh's got that Peck Drill Peck combo. So it's just like all these Pokemon are much more usable this season, and in a meta that's being dominated by ground, you will see a lot more flyers this season. So if you're going to see more flyers this season, you may see more electric this season, especially the top 3. So what combos electric and flying is the main thing. What does combo electric and flying? Not ground, not grass. It's got to be just some sort of like neutral. I'm actually just curious now. Give me a Corviknight and like a more Pekko or something, or Stunfisk. Yeah, let's just put in more Pekko and Stunfisk. What is the answers to this combo? Not much. Like there's no hard, like Piloswine as a ground ice, right? But otherwise, you know, just a lot of neutral. Like something like this is gonna be a pretty tough combo to deal with. So if you're gonna start building combos, electric, flying, that's a pretty good combo there. You know, again, Ghost is pretty free against a lot of these. Anyways, I don't know. I'm starting to just go down off the top of my head. So I think I got the main points out. It's going to be I'm unclear if it's going to be wider as last season or about the same. My first thought was it was going to be wider than last season's meta, which was already a very, very wide Great League meta, like one of the widest Great League metas we've had in a long, long time. But the reason I said that is because, like, if you look at that list I put together, it was Jumpluff fell off, Galarian Moltres has fallen off, and maybe Fred has fallen off. And then you've added a lot more use of Carbink. You've added Empoleon. You've added Togekiss. You've added Ninetales. You've added, like, the list goes on. More of these dragons are added on. Charizard's added on. Pharaoh's added on. Like, you've added a lot more. So I think the meta is probably just wider this season. I think certain typing, again, whether certain typings rise to the main forefront of the meta, like I said, my early guess is Steel, Flying, and Ice. Steel, Flying, Ice, and what else did I say? And maybe some Grass. I think those are going to start to sneak up a bit. But if you look at everything else, you're still going to have 2 to 3 Pokemon in every typing that will be strong, right? Your fighters are still Primeape and Unalip. Your waters are still, obviously Empoleon's now there, but Lapras, Jellicent, Gastrodon, Azumarill, like none of that has changed. For Alligator there, none of that has changed. Normal typings, I still think Fred has some, but like Wiggly. I've seen a few more Dunsparce. Again, I think people kind of recognize Fred is down, and I think people are trying to Dunsparce. So you may see a few more of those because you also have the Rock Slide for the Flyers and the Drill Run for the Rocks and Steels. So Dunsparce may make a. I trusted it. Rock Slide got buffed, but I'm not even caring about the Rock Slide. Once that rollout got nerfed, you can really feel the difference with that rollout nerf. Yeah, fairies. You got your Dedennes and your Togekiss and Carbink, and oh yeah, there's a lot of fairies. Jeez. Definitely the top 5: Carbink, Dedenne, Togekiss, Azumarill, Wiggly are all going to be very meta. Weezing, could be a kind of sneaky one with Sludge too, and Brutal Swing for some ghosts here. So I think it's going to be a pretty wide open meta. I think it's going to be a lot of just like a lot of strong Pokemon in each typings, the main meta typings that we've had before, and certain typings rising up to sort of counteract these new buff Pokemon and the way that the meta has been in the past. So those are my initial thoughts in a very maybe convoluted, not on point way, but hopefully that was a bit helpful. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you've been using. So I've used a couple teams. I'm doing something different this season. I hit Legend every season for like 15 seasons straight. And then I've missed how many have I missed? 2 of the last 5 or 3 of the last 6, something like that. I've missed more than I've wanted to at this point. I've recognized there's 2 things that have changed. One is, and the main one is, once you miss Legend once after breaking that streak, you don't feel as bad at missing it anymore, which is fine. But the second thing is, I have not been playing the majority of my games, and then I wait till the last 5 weeks, and then I'm a super 29.93, and then I just don't make it. I've played every single set, every single game this season so far. I've got a 61% win percentage over, I'm shooting this Sunday night to go up Monday. So how many days has that been? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So over 6 days, 61 win percentage. I'm at rank 18 or 19 right now. So I'm going to get my rating soon. I'm going to make it my mission to play as many games as I can and try to push Legend early, just to show that I can prove to you guys and prove to myself that I can still do that. So that's gonna be different. But with that said, I've got 3+ teams that I've used that I just won't have time to showcase this week because I did all these Beyond the Hypes. After Beyond the Hypes, I started trying. So I did one with Venusaur, and that worked very well. And then I did one with Blastoise. That worked very well. I think Blastoise being very strong. And I did one with Scizor. That, of course, has worked very well. So I've been dominating with a bunch of those Pokemon. I think Blastoise, I'm going to go on record right now. If the meta, the Toronto Regional is not till January this year. And so the meta will change one more time. If the meta does not evolve much next season, I'm bringing Blastoise to the Play Pokemon Championship. I think Blastoise is going to be on my Legend team this year. I think Blastoise, I kind of crapped on Blastoise when I first did my initial thoughts on it because I'm like, why would you use Blastoise when you just have Feraligatr that spams like crazy? And now you have Empoleon that does Empoleon that hits harder too and stuff like that. But being able to get to those Hydro Cannons in 12 and 9 while also being able to take charge moves is a freaking game changer for a Pokemon like this. I think because all your other Hydro Cannon users are generally very glassy, right? You have Empoleon, Feraligatr, Samurott, Greninja, Swampert. They're all very, very glassy Hydro Cannon users. So I've always been oh, I love these hard-hitting Hydro Cannon users. They're so glassy, but they just hit so hard. So when I used Blastoise the first time, oh, this doesn't hit as hard. This isn't as fun. But then you're oh, I'm still throwing out 4 Hydros now because I can actually take charge moves, which the other ones can't as much. So Blastoise, I think, is going to be a very, very strong. Blastoise is my under-ranked MVP of last season, and I think it's going to be the same this season. Even with these electric and steels coming up here. I guess Empoleon's the only real steel that's an issue because Hydro Cannons are resisted here. But I just think it plays so well against most of the meta here. And just the bulk is great. Anyways, little secret for those of you who made it 35 minutes into the video. Anyways, that is it. That's my thoughts on the meta. Let me know your thoughts on the meta. League turnover tomorrow. It is the Ultra League and a Great League Summer Cup. I assume we'll mostly play Great League just because that's where the views are. But if you want some Ultra League sprinkled in there, let me know in the comments below. If you want me to do it beyond the hype of Ultra League. I haven't even looked at the Ultra League rankings yet. I'm just going to, we're 35 minutes in a video. Why not? Okay, I guess not surprising. You got just the Pokemon that have always been strong in the Ultra League with the buff Pokemon. Okay, that's exactly what this is. So you got the Pokemon that have always been strong in this league. Lapras. I saw Registeel here. Even Cresselia's here with the confusion buff. And then Jellicent right there. And then you have the other Pokemon, Corviknight. Yeah, Corviknight Bellibolt has been meta for a couple seasons now, top here. But then you got your Togekiss and Regidrago and all the buff Pokemon from this season up at the top here as well. So Crystal here with Rockrucker at 21. So yeah, okay. It's not surprising that this is what we're seeing here. Anyways, we'll cover that in top teams tomorrow. So stay tuned for those top teams. Anyways, now I'm done. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.